Oops, sorry. Now I
Good afternoon, Emil.
Yo, I
Oh, sorry, I'm late.
am here.
Start sharing. Link to the notes chat. Okay. Right. So I think it's 3 past. It's a good time to get started. All right. So welcome everyone to the CDEvents working group. Today is November the 27th. My name is Andrea Frittoli. I work for IBM. I'm in UTC. I placed a link to the meeting notes in the chat. If you would like to sign yourself in, feel free to do so. Yeah. Thanks, Brett, for joining us today. Great to see you.
Good to see you guys. Sorry, I've been missing.
Yeah, so I have a couple of things on the added on the agenda, but feel free to add as we go. And if there are things that you would like to talk about earlier, maybe you have to leave, just let us know. Let me know. Okay. So first thing I wanted to follow up on, last week we discussed about the governance and contributor ladder, and we said we'd aim to merge it this week. So I was wondering, I know, thanks Samuel for the reviews, that you reviewed it and approved it. I was wondering if there was any further feedback or comments from anyone.
Yeah, I haven't had a chance to look at it, but don't block on me at least. But yeah, like I'm sure as long as we get one approval, especially if it's coming from a meal, I think we should probably be good to merge it, in my opinion. But I will definitely look at it at some point. Just I've been just very busy like with vacation, so sorry about that.
No worries, Ben. Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think for me the main thing, if we do merge these, then the next thing we can set up an election so that we have like a formally elected governing board for the project, and have like a way to track maintainer files and those kind of things. So I think those would be good things to add. So but we can definitely iterate further. I mean, if folks find issues or things I would like to change, once this is merged, nothing is written in stone. So I think we just it's us at the end of the day. So we can just discuss it and agree on things and change them.
Yeah, I agree. I think it should be possible to merge this now. It has gotten some eyes on it at least, and I saw that Fatih has also looked at it and he thinks it's good. So I think it should be fine to merge it, and then of course we can open other PRs to change things if needed later on.
Cool. Just quickly, one thing related to that, I guess, is the format that we track maintainers in the various repo. And thanks again, Emil, for the reviews on that. So based on recommendation, I created a code owners file, which includes current owners, and then we'll add as we go for a specific repo. And I guess the question is, do we want to have here a list of names? So we could use a GitHub team, and then we don't have to change this anymore. We can only change it to add, if you want, a emeritus list here. The only downside of that is that we don't have a PR then when someone is added to the team, we don't have a PR associated to that. But we could use a GitHub issue. I don't know if that's explains the problem. Basically, I'm used in other projects to have a process where when someone is added to a maintainer list, there is a PR that tracks the fact that that was done and approved. But in fact, the actual access is granted by the GitHub team someone belongs to, and that is not tracked by any PR issue in any case, unless GitHub provides some audit capabilities, which could be.
So out of curiosity, so I've seen this done a few different, well, two ways that you mentioned. I always wondered this, what benefit besides like history do you get is that the only thing that you get with the PR is just history of adding someone, or like what, I guess, like,
yeah,
I'm just trying. Yeah.
In this specific case, yes. So it depends on the automation you have in place. So in some of the Kubernetes project, they use a tool called Prow, and then having an owner's files there is actually read by Prow, and it actually defines permissions for users. But unless you have some extra automation in place, you use like GitHub defaults, which is what we're doing here, because we don't have fancy requirements. So yeah, having a PR is just for historic purposes, so that you can have you can have a workflow where someone say, okay, let's add this person to this group, and then the others say yes, okay, +1, and then it's merged, and so you have like a history that the process happened. But the same can be achieved with an issue. I mean, we don't have an inbuilt approval process in the issue, but still you can use comments, or you can use +1s or things like that. So
I guess my main concern against this, having it specifically exposed in the file like this, is that we will have double source of truth. So we'll have the same thing here and also in the GitHub team. And I guess what is here in the code owners file, those people here will get automatically added as reviewers to pull requests, I assume.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that is an automation based on this, but at the same time we say that the maintainers are the ones in the GitHub team. So unless they are in sync, we will have a problem. So we need somehow to have them in sync if we keep them on two places. That's having a single source of truth is probably my main argument against specifying them here. But I can rest my case either or.
Yeah, I think the one caveat with having them being separate is it does provide a huge amount of flexibility, right? Like you can specify that this person can only be, can only be a co-owner of these directories or this file, so on and so forth. If you needed to do that with teams, if for one specific person, you would have to create a separate team, or maybe we just do a hybrid. If we have a one-off person, then maybe we can just add them to this co-owners file. But I think for our simple use case, just having a single team that houses all of us, I think is probably preferred. And if we need to go down these weird edge cases where maybe we want a single person to own something, we can add them to this list. Maybe it's like maybe it's like some specific like requirement for like a specific company even, that could be an option, but that could also be a team. So yeah, I don't know, I can definitely see arguments for both sides, to be honest, but I think for our majority of our use cases, I think going simplified, single team, and just add it as a team, as the code owner is probably best, to be honest.
Yeah. All right, then I will update this. I will keep this maintainers file, but replace it with stars and the name of the team. I will remove the maintainers table, and keep the emeritus list. Yeah, I guess. Do we want the list of people on the team to be public? I think the team
I think it should be
visibility.
visible who is maintaining a certain project or repository. I hope that is possible to have that visible. I'm not exactly
Yeah.
sure though.
I think it's only from the who maintainers of the repo that can see it. I don't think
Or maybe you need
you
to be
can
a member in the org at least. But
yeah, a member in the org, I believe is the
yeah,
I don't even
Right.
know if it's a member of the org technically. Yeah, so it's a little, GitHub's a little restrictive in that regard.
right.
Right. Yeah, I tried with a user that is not a member of the org and I cannot see. But if I try with a bot who is a member of the org, it can see the content of the team. So yeah.
That's a
And if I
drawback
go,
maybe of it then. If we want it to be visible who is the maintainer, I'm not sure. Is that the case? Do we always want that, or is that, I don't know, integrity violation, exposing those names?
yeah.
Of
So
course,
this is
if we
just
add them in a file as this, then it's very visible to anyone that can read the repository.
yeah.
Yeah, which makes sense why people probably have it like that. Then that, well, at least I thought it was only for history, but that actually makes sense if people can't see the team's list of people.
I don't mind either or. I think it's good for myself to know who is maintaining a certain repository. That's interesting information, but if that's somehow violating integrity, I shouldn't speak
I
like
think
that.
that the information is duplicated in the Git log. So I know who's maintaining the, I mean, I don't know who the maintainer is, but I know who's working on the project, and that's important. You know, in my case, I don't mind being added to one of these files. I mean, I'd like people to know that I'm the maintainer of this repository.
But to be honest, and I've seen a lot of code owners that have names in there that have since long been gone, that aren't maintainers anymore. So it's really up to, so what I typically do is I look up code owners and then I'll ping a couple people. If they don't respond within a week or given, a week or two, then I'll just look at the commit history of who's committed in a good portion. And that's usually how I find a more accurate maintainer, because like I said, there's been a lot of times where I'll ping someone, he's like, oh, I don't work on this project anymore, or oh, I'm not really involved anymore. So while that is probably true, it's probably more visible, it's up to us to keep it up to date. I obviously, but that is a nuance for people. I'm sure I'm not the only one that does that, where they probably look at committers as for the maintainers as opposed to the code owner's file itself.
Well, with the code owners file, though, we get automation around assigning reviewers for PRs. So, I mean, there is that piece. And then, the discipline's on us to keep the file up to date.
Well, that's true for teams as well, though. Like he would replace the names with a single team and it would still add that team to it, right?
Okay. pretty sure.
So what I can do, I can add the team here. So we get the automation still for reviewers, and I could keep the table if you want to make sure that we have further transparency, or I can remove the table. Either way, eventually we could also build some automation that generates a table for us if you wanted it to be documented and make sure it's up to date. But I guess the easiest at this point would be just to put the team here, so we are sure, at least from an automation point of view, we are up to date. And then it would be up to us to maintain the table and the list of emeritus.
Yeah, I think that's a good middle ground solution. Like, it gives the visibility, and then it also makes it easy for us to maintain at least who has access, right? Because we might add someone to the team, but forget to add them to the code owner file, right? So that definitely at least makes it like what Emil was saying, like, right, a single source of truth. So it makes it much easier.
Yeah, cool. Okay.
Well, one more thing,
yeah.
just because about the contribution ladder there, I see that we state there that contributors can get into the emeritus state, and then they are more or less just removed from the project. They are not seen anywhere. But for maintainers, which have reached another step in the ladder, I guess they will then be shown here for eternity, more or less. So that's it doesn't really say in the processes.md in your new PR there that it's.
I think the emeritus state is for maintainers, but it could be that it's phrased wrongly in the. It was meant for maintainers, anyways.
It said when contributors change, contributors kind of start stepping down, moving down the ladder, and moving into emeritus status, and then they completely step away from the project in the end of the furthest down.
Yeah, I guess this is sorry, contributor here is meant as a generic term for all level of contributions. But I can replace it with another term to make it more clear.
I think it's in the end there, line 197 and further. When a contributor's commitment level change. So there is it contributors a lot. And there it's completely stepping away from the project. This doesn't say anything specific there that maintainers will still be visible, or there's anything in the code owner's file. I'm not sure if
what I mean is that the term contributor here does not refer to the specific level contributor here. You know, it's the generic term, but typically the emeritus is tracked for maintainers, because that's where you get all reviewers. That's where you get like extra privileges that you don't get normally, really.
But for reviewers, we don't have anywhere to note that they have stepped down to emeritus state or stepped out, or it's only the maintainers that we now can provide a place to note that, right? Or where would reviewers be noted?
Yeah, I mean, for reviewers, the proposal I think was to have like a was there a proposal to have a file as well?
I don't think it was. To become a reviewer.
Yeah, as a contributor is nominated by OpenAI PR against the appropriate to reviewers MD. So yeah, I guess it's the same kind of story. So maybe I can update this to just use code owners in both cases, and the team will be different. So that it's.
So what is then the difference between a reviewer and the maintainer when it comes to operations? It will be able to automate, or both of them will of course get notified for new PRs, I guess, if they are both on the code owner's file.
Yeah, I think it's basically it's triage. From in GitHub terms, it's triage access versus write access. So yeah. Or maybe we don't need to have reviewer role as well. I mean, this is a
That's what
kind
I
of
was thinking.
standards.
Maybe, yeah, maybe it's too complex to have that role as well, and not really necessary. I don't know.
Where is it? Member privileges.
Why is my mail on
Yes,
billing address, by the way? Okay.
because you created the org, probably.
Oh, okay, probably, yeah.
But there's
Oh.
no billing.
No, not until we misuse something. Yeah.
So it's typically, I think this is triage is for reviewers, and probably write the maintainers, or maintain.
Or maintain, I think. Yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
So in Ledger project, normally it's like if you have a higher bar for becoming a maintainer, then you can have a reviewer step. It's kind of inviting to contributors. You have a lower bar to reach that status, but you get some extra privileges and responsibilities by becoming a reviewer. And then the next step is to become a maintainer. So yeah, I mean, we can have it in the policies, or we can remove it. The fact that it's in the policy doesn't mean that we actually have to use it. But if at some point the project grows enough that we want to have reviewers, we have it defined. Or if you prefer, we can remove it.
I guess it says on the maintainers that once you're a reviewer, you can more or less gain maintainer role. So there is a ladder, I guess, if you should follow the processes.md process. So maybe it would be actually better to not have the reviewer role at all in the ladder.
Okay. Yeah, it doesn't
You
say
don't
that
see
it's a requirement to be a
yeah,
reviewer.
Yeah. We can
But
keep it.
okay.
No, I don't mind.
I think I need to update this here. Well, maybe it is intimidating to have too many things. I don't know. Any other opinion? Should we keep or remove reviewers?
I haven't read it fully, so I can't comment.
Yeah.
Okay.
That makes sense. Sorry. Yeah. Well, I guess, I mean, if you're not going to use it in the beginning, I might as well remove it and keep the PR smaller, and we can add it back.
Yeah, I think it makes sense. You said you copied it from some CNCF template, right? Maybe.
Yeah.
If we would add a link to that template, maybe is that already there? No, it's not, right?
Yeah, it is.
Oh, it is maybe. So we can update this based on that template if needed later.
Yeah, so this is the
There, yeah,
link.
good. Yeah, so
Okay.
let's keep it simple and remove reviewer then, if that doesn't pose any problems.
Okay.
That's good.
All right. Yeah, I guess let's stop here about this topic, and thanks everyone for the input. Yeah, let's switch then to the next topic in the agenda.
Sorry, could I just interrupt slightly? I see we have a new participant in the meeting that hasn't been here before. At least I don't know who you are, Andrew. If you would like to just say who you are, Andrew, and you're so welcome to be here.
Hi, I'm Andrew Larson. I work with Brett Smith. He said he was coming today, so I figured I'd drop in and see what was going on.
Great, welcome.
Thanks.
Nice to see you.
Yeah, welcome. Good to have you.
Yeah, welcome. And yeah, also thanks, Emil. Well spotted. I wasn't looking at the participant list. Okay. But Andrea promised normally we don't spend 20 minutes talking about admin stuff. This is an exception, not the rule. So let's get in the most interesting part of the meeting. So Ben, do you want to bring up the connecting and linking event part?
Yeah. So, oh, do you want me to share my screen? My internet connection is pretty terrible, unfortunately. So, I'm in a hotel, so it's not the best. But I can kind of give you the gist. So, I saw Emil's comment of, the examples, and I had a meeting with Andrea earlier last week, about examples because, um I wanted to talk about a couple things. So, and I decided to leave examples out except for the example structure that I currently had. And I'm just going to update all of the examples to have links inside of them, or at least the chain ID, or maybe an empty set of links. I really don't know yet. However, the biggest thing that me and Andre talked about, I think it was on Wednesday or Thursday or something of that nature, is that it's very painful to add context fields. I think I've had to add like over 200 fields because it's duplicated quite a bit. I ended up creating a GitHub issue. So I added another agenda item, which is the very last one there. It's maintainability of schemas, examples, and tests. And I'll have something demoable maybe next week or maybe the week after of generating schemas and examples from just code genning them, which will make it a lot easier to add a new field. You just have to add it in one place, and then it can update. You can choose to update everything, or you can update specific events, CDEvents, based off version is an example. So that's what I've been working on. So this is a separate proposal, but that's what I wanted to comment about the connecting and linking events, why that the examples folder or the example links folder got removed is because I've decided to kind of like rethink that. And it's just to make that easier for us. So with that said, like I said, the last thing I need to do is just add the links object. I think I'm just going to make an empty links object for now, or a links array, sorry, in each of the examples, but just have a chain ID. And the reason for that is that you can have links, but without any sort of context, it's not too useful because when you're looking at an example by themselves, you're just looking at a single link. But when you have chains, when you have chain or links, it's basically connecting things, right? So when you're looking at a single event, there's nothing to be connected there, right? It's just a single event, so it's hard to make sense of it. So I have some ideas on how to improve that with the maintainability proposal, but with the connecting and linking events PR that's open now, I addressed all of Emil's comments. There's one comment that I finally understood what he was talking about with the link kind. So originally it was an artifact kind, but then I realized I had to look at it again that the UUID didn't say the type. So after I looked back, I understood exactly what you were saying, that it's completely completely ambiguous. So I'll make that update. And that should be the last thing with examples. Those are the two last things. And I believe everything else has been addressed. With that said, I'll have the examples done today. Like I said, that's a little bit more difficult because it's for every single event, and which kind of like segues into to the maintainability of schemas and examples and tests. I wanted to go a little bit deeper into this, but if anyone had questions about connecting or linking events, please let me know. And if no one does, I can move on to the maintainability of schema because it's a little bit related. And I know I covered it a little bit. So Okay, so it looks like there's no questions. So maintainability of schemas and examples, already talked about, very painful. The biggest thing is currently examples have two purposes in our current repo. The first one is examples are used for, examples, like people go in, see what a payload would look like for a particular CD event. However, it's also used for tests. So the problem with that is tests expect a very strict structure, which makes documenting or making or explaining how do you use a CD event or how they connect with links, for example, becomes much more difficult because it expects this format. So I feel so. My proposal is going to separate the two. It's going to separate examples as just for readability, for people to come in, read the examples, get some, have some markdown in there as well that explains like certain use cases. So it might have like a links folder that explains like how these links are connected and whatnot, which are completely separate from the test. So tests are no longer going to rely on examples. However, instead, we're also going to generate tests from probably the schemas. We're going to generate tests. So when SDK is to run its CI/CD or CI in this case, it can just use that test. Either it can use the tests that we generate directly in the spec folder, or they can actually generate their own tests. So that is one possibility as well. So it doesn't need to live there, but I just wanted to call that out. Another thing that I wanted to call out is I explored 3 different tools. So I explored Mustache, which is a pretty popular templating engine. I also explored Jinja, which is another popular one, especially with like documentation. And then another one is called Gomplate, which is it's based off the Go templating language. It's very, very simple, which is something that I like. But the choice of the templating engine, I feel like is a little arbitrary. I just wanted to list the 3 that I looked into. But if anyone has some favorites or one that I didn't mention, when I create the proposal will be done probably in the next few days. But if there is some preferred templating engines, please let me know, because like I said, the more options I can look at, the better. So the examples that the demo that I'm going to give next week is going to be using the Gomplate, because it's very simple and very easy. But that's not to say that we can use something else. I just wanted to show a quick demo of like how things are going to work. So yeah, that's kind of the biggest thing, is that it's going to it's going to improve the schemas and the examples tremendously. Even schemas that have intersections within each other, like have similar fields. I think one of the fields, repository, is shared between, I forgot which event subject it was, but repository existed for like every other event or every event. But yet, it was, it needs to be duplicated a number of times, right? So that's something we also can, move away from duplication. We can have these shared commonalities between the subjects and their predicates. So so a lot of benefits there. So that's kind of that's going to be upcoming here within, like I said, in the next couple of days. So I'll ping the Slack channel. If you guys have any comments, any other ideas or additions, please let me know. And I'm really excited to actually get the ball rolling on this, because like you said, like adding that chain ID like 200 times and then adding the links like 200 times, I was like, oh man, we need to really solve for this. So I'm really excited that this is going to make things easier. But yeah, so like I said, keep a lookout, and that's pretty much the gist of it.
One comment there, Ben. I totally understand that it's a pain in the ass to do this for this PR, because it has 2 changes to the context object.
Yeah.
I wouldn't foresee too many PRs coming down the line that affects the context, and the pain is of course related to the context changes.
Yeah.
If there wasn't any changes in the context, it wouldn't affect all.
It would be a lot easier. Yes.
Yeah. So that's one comment. So I hope that that will not be as painful in the in the future.
Yeah, yeah, and I think
Yeah, another comment there would be that I also think that it's very useful that any example or documentation of events that we provide in the spec are somehow validated towards the schemas if possible still, because it's so big risk, I think, that we include like example JSON blobs in the documentation without
if it's
having them verified, which
yeah, but if they're generated, it should be, unless the generation is bad, right? Or if the, how we generate it is invalid, then, like maybe a typo or like just maybe misremembering something, then that's the only place where that technically could happen. Because like if you're updating the schemas, more than likely the examples, depending on how we do it, should also be updated appropriately. And if they're not, maybe you're right. Maybe we can have like some small, smoke tests, if you will. Not really smoke tests, like I guess validation tests to ensure that, the schema and the examples are compatible with one another. That should be a pretty simple test to write. So that can be maybe a separate thing from this proposal, because that's more testing the examples. But I feel like isn't needed necessarily for this proposal itself, because like I said, like I've already dealt with the links proposal, and that's already like 1,500 lines. So I want to keep this one as small as possible. But that's not to say we shouldn't do it immediately, but I'd rather just get this one in when we can, and then once that's accepted, then move to maybe testing the examples if that works. I can create a GitHub issue if that helps you, Emil.
So are we talking about two different validations, right? One is validation of the SDKs, that we use the examples in the spec to validate the SDK, and the other one is actually that we validate the examples folder in the spec towards the schemas.
Yes.
So there are two different validations going on. Do
Yeah,
you
yeah,
then
yeah.
propose that we remove both of those validations?
No. So the testing
of those?
validation of the SDKs will still exist. It will just be a different folder. And then the schema and example validation is just to make sure that the examples are up to date. That's all that's going to be doing. So it's a different type of test, right?
Yeah.
So
a couple of quick things if anybody's interested.
Sure.
We've used Jinja 2 for 7-8 years as our templating engine for our packaging system. It is stupid powerful. It is sometimes hard to read, sometimes hard to understand, because it is a programming language as well as a templating language. We used Gauntlet recently for GitHub repositories. It's pretty simple. It works pretty well, but it is pretty opinionated on what it does with the files, which is kind of annoying. Honestly, for something, it just depends on whether you want it, where your expertise is. If you've got contributors that are Python contributors, Jinja is going to be great. If you've got contributors that are Go contributors, they're not going to be able to use Jinja unless they can write Python as well. And then if you want to do this in Go, obviously, I would suggest that you probably don't need Gauntlet as much as just Go templating language. But and to Emil's point, I mean, if you're not updating the context section on a regular basis, I mean, that's a lot of work. I will say this is that we've got a bunch of schema work in our event system here at SAS, and the contract testing for the schema, it should be higher on the list. It should be high on the list. You don't want your examples to not be able to pass the schema. So those are a couple of things that we corrected internally right away.
Yeah, so
yeah, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say Go templates would be great, but then we would have to write that CLI ourselves. Gauntlet already exists as a CLI, so that's why it was chosen. So I have 8 years of Go experience, so that's why I looked into Gauntlet, because I was very familiar with the Go templating language. And then yeah, so I think we can just use Gauntlet, and then Jinja. Yeah, and that was one thing that looked to Jinja is very powerful, but also very complex, which is why I was like, okay, maybe because we're using it for something very, very basic. That I was like, okay, maybe GOM plate might be the better solution. So that's kind of like what I'm thinking. So, but with that said, Brett, like you said, when I submit the proposal, please, with your background, please look into it because it seems like you have a lot of experience with templating. And just let me know if you see anything that kind of like calls out for another tool versus the other.
No, I get you. I mean, Gauntlet probably will do the work you need it to do. I'm saying we keep it as simple as possible.
Cool.
Because I mean, you're not going to use this, to Emil's point, you're not going to be using this every day. But the contract testing of the schema, which is a different topic, that should be enforced somewhere, like on a regular basis. I mean, we should put it in an action or something where if you create a PR that touches the examples directory, it runs the validation as part of the PR,
As a
one of the
CI?
checks in the PR. Yeah.
And we should be able to do that too with this change as well. And then further, and hopefully, updating the context is like, it doesn't happen too often, but it's like when it does happen, we want to be able to use a tool that does it, does most of the work for us. So that's kind of like the thinking and kind of the goal there. Yeah, and then just I think also having things being generated, like especially code generated, like it allows us to move. If we need to make a lot of changes, let's say we go to a V2, it becomes very, very easy, like a lot further down the road. Oh, we already have a validate examples. Okay, sweet.
Yeah. So I got one other statement to bring up on this, and this is just me popping in for the first time and catching up with all the stuff you're working on. I have been in the CDEvents repositories a lot because we're doing a workshop. Andrew's helping me with a workshop on for the CD Foundation as part of the workshop, we're going to roll out some CDEvents. So the question I have is that while Gauntlet makes sense in the context of the spec, why would we not use the SDKs to generate code? Like one of the SDKs, the Python or the Go SDK, why couldn't we just generate the examples using the SDK, and then you make the change to the schema, and then the SDK can write out the files instead of having yet another templating language? It's just a question.
Yeah, well, for me it's actually kind of two things. The first one being that we might have markdown files. So if we're just talking about just the payload, we absolutely could just have the SDKs generate these. But that's not you can generate the payload however you see fit. And then another thing too is the SDKs might not be up to date with the schemas, or to generate the appropriate examples. So that's another thing. So that would mean like we would have to generate the schemas, update that, then update the SDKs, and then go back and update the examples, as opposed to doing the examples and the schemas at the same time. So it's kind of like the two answers, or two answers that
so
I'm
just gonna channel my inner Emil here. That's a pretty big risk of the SDKs not being in line with the examples and the schema. As part of the workshop we're doing, one of the cool things that you can see is we use the schema to restrict what event you can post to the service we're writing. And so if the schema, as long as the schema is right, when you create the receiver, whatever event you post to it, gets schema validated right there. And we did this internally as well. This is how our internal event system works, is that all these schemas, that JSON schema we have, we validate almost everything that you post to the service. So it's really important, right? And then the services that post to our service uses the SDK, and internally we called it a library, but we have learned from our ways, and in this new project, it is an SDK. And when you write a service that posts to the other service, it uses the SDK so that it formats the message properly, so it passes the schema that comes with the other one. Anyway, just a bunch of stuff that we should keep in mind. I'm not telling you to change your proposal. I understand now what you're getting at with the Gauntlet, because you might have readmes and stuff to update. So
Yeah.
okay.
So I see Andrea, if you wanted to time it, because I have a couple responses to that, but if you wanted to go first, Andrea.
Yeah, I just wanted to add kind of what we do today before this proposal. So the examples folders that we have today is verified with a CI job that is valid against the schemas every time we make a change to the spec. And the example folder is then used by the SDKs, at least by the Go SDK and the Java one as well, I believe, to as kind of conformance testing. So we basically generate the SDK, but then add some tests to verify that using the SDK, it is possible to produce files that are identical in what we have in the examples folder. So that's
Well, there you go. Andrea's already done it.
How it's
Nice.
set up.
Yeah. No, so we already do validation there, but what so I come from a background like so I had about 4 years experience on the AWS SDKs for Go and about 2 years experience on the Java SDK for AWS. And if we're making examples for the SDKs, I think it makes sense. But for the particular payloads where it's more tied to the spec, I think having the examples be generated there, like I said, it's a little bit of a circular dependency because then you have to, depending on how you go ahead and update. And to say that, if you're not updated immediately with the spec, that's bad. That's not true because you want to be as close as possible, but like even with the AWS SDKs, we released every day, but there's still a difference. There's still this lead time of when a schema gets updated versus when the SDKs get updated, right? That's just the nature of things. And then you might have internal people that update their SDKs based off this new schema before they go out publicly. So there's many reasons why they might not match the most up-to-date schema just yet. So I don't know if that's a good appropriate argument in particular, but I definitely think we should do as much validation against the schemas as possible. So with that said, I think the idea here is that we would have this new tests folder that would be generating some stubs or some mocked payloads that the SDKs would be validated against, which we already do today, which Andrea was saying, is just this, it's all handwritten. That's where it comes down to. And that this is where this is what we're trying to solve, is moving away from handwriting everything and having it be more code-gen. So that's kind of the goal. But with that said, I do like maybe thinking about like what I like is the approach of like thinking about it differently. So I do like that, like your comments there, Brett. So I'll take back with what you said and see what we can do to incorporate some of the ideas, especially like can we use the SDKs? See if that's a viable option, and then maybe look into how can we do better validation with examples and the schemas? How can we do better examples with or better validation with the tests and the SDK? So I think those are kind of like the two things there. If that works for you.
Yeah, no, I'm just talking through it with you guys, like, trying to help out with experience. Like I said, look, when you've got people that contribute, you try not to argue with them too much if they're going to do stuff that's going to help.
Right.
So I don't want to keep banging on this. You guys want to go ahead and move on to your next issue? I think I got everything I needed out of this. I mean, the main reason I popped in is because I'm now trying to consume this stuff, and so I wanted to come in and see what you guys were up to. And I don't know if this is the best place for me to come in and like derail your conversations on admin stuff, but I'm looking for a venue to understand how you guys intend all this stuff to work better than the readmes.
This is the best place to do that then. Yeah.
Cool.
So I'll give you some context from my background. So I met Andrea actually at CDCon. I had no idea what CDEvent was. So So I met him there, and I understood what the purpose was, what they were trying to solve. And so after looking at the docs, I was kind of lost, to be honest. Like I was telling Andrea just like the other day, like I didn't know, I get this question of like what from internal people at Apple, they're like, what is source? Like what is that supposed to be? So like I completely understand like trying to read the docs, and what Andrea had said earlier, the admin stuff doesn't happen often. This was actually, I think this is the first time like we went actually pretty deep in the governance type of stuff. So please, if you have any questions, like especially like around the code generation or whatever, please interject. We're more than happy to answer.
So what I want to do is before we go and take this workshop to the CD Foundation, because those guys are like hot on my heels to get done, and I'm like, yeah, give me some time. I got to figure out how this thing actually works. We're talking about like Michelle and Veronica are just like all over me to get this done, Lori. But I want to make sure that I properly represent what you guys intend. And so what I want to do is I want to cobble my workshop together enough that I can bring it to you guys, and then we can walk through it, and you guys can, let me know how you feel about, where we are, what I did. And then I can give you guys some updates on why it's engineered the way it is, because it's probably not engineered exactly the way you would think we would engineer an event system. So I do want to do that. And I tell you what, I'm going to share the repo where our project is. And in there's under the tutorials docs, there's some workshop docs. Those are not the workshops that I'm writing for. Those are the initial workshops, but they're not the workshops for the CD Foundation. So,
Okay.
but I'm going to share this. And look, dude, we open sourced this thing like right before Thanksgiving.
I don't have it access. I can't access it.
What?
Likewise.
Did you mean to share your personal fork, Smitty?
Oh man, that's my fault. I did not mean to share my personal fork. I meant to share this one, which is public. Let's try this again. As you can see, it's been a while since I've done a lot of open source work. Click on that one, see what happens.
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah.
So we just got this thing together right there before Thanksgiving, and basically it's an internal rewrite of our internal event system, which we deemed not open sourceable because of the tentacles it grew into our backends. So this is like the pure, straightforward, here's our event provenance system. And we've got some issues started, and we're working through the doc. It's got in the docs under tutorials, under workshops, we go, and I'm thinking about moving this up, but we go from Hello World to the Watcher to CDEvents, and then I'm getting ready to put an SBOM one together as well. And so I haven't shared this widely yet because it's under such heavy development, but just wanted to go ahead and start getting it out there with you guys.
Cool. And also what might be helpful for me at least is if you can give a summary of like what the workshop is and what it's trying to do. I see that there's a description here, but like for instance, if the goal is to teach CDEvents, then that's one thing. If it's to teach like event provenance registry, then that's a different thing, right? So I just want to know what the intended goal is. So whether, maybe add that to Slack or something of that nature, just kind of give us a good understanding of like what to expect when we're reading this repo.
Yeah, for now, keep it in the context of this is how event provenance EPR works.
Yeah, got it.
And then what I hope to do is so for the CD Foundation workshop, it'll be heavier on let's do some CDEvents, but I'm still trying to get it worked out in my head what it's going to look like as a workshop. So that's just for the record now, this is this is a horrible mess of look, here's how you go through getting this thing running and doing some stuff with it, and then hopefully we can get something that's more, I don't know, makes more sense for the CD Foundation.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'll take a look at this. Yeah, sometime this week or next week.
And I mean, if you look at it and you go, hey, I already see that you need this and this, yeah, we understand that, and just add a new issue, and
Okay.
we'll go look at it. And then if you're crazy, I think you've got enough work to do here. But if you're crazy and want, write a pull request, just throw it up there. We'll review it. So we've been struggling with getting enough time to work on this. I mean, we all have day jobs, so. But I did convince my company to let us work on it 2 hours a week. So yes.
Well, there you go.
And then
thanks for sharing this.
Is it 2 weeks from now, Andrea, when you have the next one?
We actually weekly now.
Yep.
Oh, you're weekly now?
Yeah, because it turns out we have a lot of things to talk about, so we said let's do it weekly.
I can probably make it the next 2 weeks, and not.
So yeah, the agenda is open. So whenever you feel like you want to share something, present something, just I would say add it to the agenda so that we know when we schedule accordingly.
Cool. All right. I didn't mean to derail everything, but I thought that you guys might be interested. I know Andrea made me feel like it was interesting. So yeah, he could just been being nice. You know how Andrea is.
I am as well. So thanks for sharing.
Yeah, no worries. I know that, I mean, we've talked about this event-driven stuff, and you and Erickson had done something similar the last time I showed you guys the presentation of what we did internally. So.
Yeah. Great.
Cool. I guess we only have 2 minutes left. I added a few links to the bottom about things that I started to work around in terms of artifacts, events, and adding SBOM URI and custom events. So I added some more context in there. And I've seen, Emil, you've already been doing some reviews, so thanks for that. And anyone else who's interested.
What is that artifact scanned event? Like, what does that even mean?
I was actually thinking about that as well. I was about to write a comment about it here. I think in some extent it's just one test of your artifact. I mean, you can do what kind of tests on your artifact?
Well,
scanning it is one way of testing it, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one feature that is becoming very common across container registries. So that's something that many container registries will
scanning
do.
it for FOSS, what 3PPs you have in your binary, right? That's what you mean,
right?
Or
yeah.
You should also have an event that says, "Hey, I scanned this a container," because like I might have 4 places I want to distribute that container, and I've got something waiting for that event, and I'm not going to distribute it until I see the event that says it was scanned. Right. So I see the build event, and then I see the scanned event, and then I go, oh, look, this container's been built and scanned. It's the latest version. Let me push it to these 4 places. It makes sense to me. And I'm super excited about the SBOM URI because I've started immediately after I got into the CDEvent piece and working with my registry there. I'm like, oh man, I'm going to have to put SBOMs in here, and I'm going to have to be able to link them to, link them around. And so, yeah, that's good stuff. That's heavy on my list of things we're working on is artifact scanning and recording the scans, reviewing the results. We were even doing auditing the scan and creating an event based on the audit of the scan, whether the risk was too high or too low. So, and Andrew knows way more about that than I do because he's worked on all that code. But also the SBOMs, Andrew's been working with me on the SBOMs as well, and we're creating SBOMs. And anytime we create something, we make an event for it because there could be 12 things downstream waiting on it or watching for it. So it's all good stuff. I'll go look at those PRs, Andrew.
Yeah, please chime in. Yeah.
I'll back Smitty up that security events are a pretty high priority for us, and we didn't have a nice, clean way to represent the work we did in our pipeline. So having something like that available would be a lot nicer than the horror we came up with to get it done.
Hey, we wrote a schema for that. It's fine.
That's true. We did write a schema.
I look
Yeah,
forward,
well,
especially the SBOM Mira. I think that's critical. Yeah.
yeah, cool. All right. Well, we are out of time, but great conversation and great to see everyone. Have a great rest of your day. Until next time.
Yep. I'll put this on the
Thank you all.
calendar for the next
See you.
2 weeks. See you
Bye-bye.
guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.